It took over 30 years and improvements in DNA technology to find out what happened to Carmen. On the 22nd of March 1993, 19-year-old Carmen Van Huss had been to visit her grandma in the hospital, and on the way home she dropped her dad and her little brother off at their house before she went straight home. She had a really early shift the next morning at Pizza Hut where she worked, and she still needed to wash her uniform and stuff, so she wanted to get organised, so she got back to her apartment at about 11:30 p.m. Neighbours claimed that they heard her outside in the hallway talking, and they could hear a man's voice as well. They were just casually chatting and laughing, and then it all went quiet when they seemingly both went inside. A few hours later, neighbours said that they heard a struggle in the apartment, and they could clearly hear Carmen shout, "Get off me," over and over again. After this, they heard the sound of somebody running down the corridor towards the building's parking structure. A noise complaint got logged with the building management, but nobody called the police or anything. It was literally just that, and the building manager went up and pinned a notice to her door just saying, "Keep it down," and that was that. 2 days later, Carmen's supervisor at Pizza Hut called her dad, who was like her next of kin at work, to say that she hadn't been into work for the past 2 days and they weren't able to get hold of her. So her dad was instantly worried and he went straight to the apartment. He knocked loads of times, but there was no response, so he ended up using his key to let himself in. When Carmen's dad opened the door, he found his daughter's body lying on the floor near her bed. She was undressed and she was absolutely covered in injuries. There was blood all of the walls, all of the floor, pooled everywhere. Detectives arrived, they started trying to figure out what had happened. They could tell that whoever had done this was known by Carmen because there was no sign of a break-in. There was empty food containers all over the place that showed that two people had eaten some kind of meal, and there was also empty beer bottles. The living room was a complete mess, which indicated that whatever had happened had started in there. The autopsy revealed that Carmen had been stabbed 61 times in the head, face and upper body, and she'd also been SA'd. Carmen's boyfriend was the first suspect, but he was cleared as he wasn't in town when it happened. All of the neighbours were questioned, but there wasn't anything else that came out of any of those questionings. Over 30 years later, investigators who refused to let the case go cold entered DNA samples that were taken from the apartment that night into the national database, but it didn't actually flag anybody, which showed that whoever it was that had done this had never been in the system before. In 2023, a lab that specialised in genetic genealogy picked up on somebody who lived down the hall from Carmen when it happened. This was a man called Dana Jermaine Shepherd, and he was 21 years old at the time of Carmen's murder, but he was now 52 years old, working at the University of Missouri. Further DNA tests were confirmed, and it confirmed that it was his DNA that was at the scene. He would be arrested on 2 counts of murder and 1 count of with deadly force. He confessed to what he did and he signed a plea deal, and he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Carmen had so much life ahead of her. She had hoped to become a vet one day because she loved animals, particularly cats, and everybody that knew her said that she had an absolute heart of gold.